agenda. So we're dropping 16. Well, good afternoon, councillors. Those here in attendance today, as well as those who might be tuning in. So as we meet here today on the unceded lands of the Palawa people, I open the City of Launceston Ordinary meeting today at 1 p.m. Thank you. In opening today, I do make an amendment to the published agenda, noting that agenda items 16.2, 16.3 and 16.4 have been withdrawn. In doing so, we will move through to mayoral acknowledgements at 2. Just a very brief mayoral acknowledgement today to thank the incredible work that has been undertaken by our Community and Network Inclusion Officer, Nindara, and some of that work today is on display as having that incredible connections. We wish Nindara the best for her further movements, as today is her second last day, I believe, and the work that network does with its inclusion officer. At number 3, declarations of interest, noting again that 16 items have been removed under 16 with the grants. So declarations of interest. A councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in a matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Do we have any declarations of interest today? There being none, moving forward to the confirmation of minutes, with the recommendation being that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the City of Launceston Council that was held on the 30th of May 24 be confirmed as true and correct record. Somebody to move? Councillor Palmer? A seconder, Councillor Harris. All of those in favour? Those against? Okay, so Councillor Pentridge against, all other councillors in favour. Noting that Councillor Britton isn't here at the moment, the motion is carried. Agenda item 5 is council workshops. 5.1 council workshop report, 30th of May to the 6th of June. Recommendation is that council notes the council workshops conducted and attended since the last council meeting for these purposes described. The CARP project status update, a risk review, NTCA facility management update, monophoma summary and outcomes from 2018 to 2024, rates modelling, budget 24-25, Northern Tasmanian Development Corporation, NTDC, annual update, UTAS transfer. Somebody to move. Councillor Gibson?
Move with an amendment, if that's okay. So, monophoma, I'd like us to delete the words "and provided the opportunity to discuss ways to support summertime events or concerts in Launceston," because we didn't get to that part of the workshop, and that will need to be a subsequent session. And also just to note that the chair was unavailable to come to the NTDC annual update, so to delete the words "chair and" under the Northern Tasmanian Development Corporation annual update.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. So moved with the amendment. Someone to second? Councillor Walker? Councillor Gibson, anything further? Councillor Walker, we're just speaking to some workshops. Thank you.
Just to speak, and I think the mover of the motion for his attention to that detail. And I was going to just address briefly that monophoma summary of outcomes. It obviously has been a great stimulus and a great event over summer months in Launceston, and I think it's most certainly prescient that council approach state government members, both our upper house members and our state government members, to encourage them to find ways that we can find future opportunities for funding events in the north of the state over some time. It's been a great success, and I congratulate the state government for having supported that initiative. I think back in perhaps Will Hodgman's days. But now that is over, and we only have fond memories to live on. So it would be good to have that discussion with state government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further comments from the table around conducted workshops? Anything further to close, Councillor Gibson? There being no more comments, all of those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. We have no councillors' leave of absence applications identified as a part of this agenda at 6, so we'll also move through 7, which is community reports, that there haven't been any identified. Into 8, public question time. 8.1, public questions on notice. 8.1.1, public questions on notice. Mr Smith with parking infringements. 8.1.2, we also have Mr Smith with graffiti and traffic infringements. Moving through to 8.2, which is public questions without notice, noting that the rules and regulations are displayed and available upon entry. It's not a time for discussion or debate, but you may ask a total of 3 questions. Our first speaker from the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Rosemary Armitage, and I'm here as the independent member for Launceston. My address is 182 Cemetery Street. So I'm wondering, on behalf of my constituents, Mr Mayor, if you can give us an update, please, on the current state of progress of the Katie's and Birchall's buildings in the Launceston Mall.
Thank you, Rosemary. I'll throw to the Acting CEO around the developments.
So we did provide an update, which is available on our website at the end of 24th of May, which confirms that through the expression of interest process, we did enter into a contract with Creative Property Holdings for sale of the site for development into mixed retail and commercial development. That contract has subsequently been terminated as Creative Properties were unable to pay the deposit in accordance with the contract, and so we're under the contract. We're currently working through dispute resolution, and we will not be making any further comment until that process concludes.
With respect, Mr Mayor, I'm aware of that was in the media, but I'm asking if there's any further, and I accept that mediation, but has mediation commenced? You will appreciate this has been ongoing for a long time, and the community really want to know, is it going to go on for 6 years? Is it going to go on for 24 years like CH Smith? Or is it actually, is it looking to be resolved? And I guess, with your indulgence, are the council still proposing to do the development themselves?
Well, we don't have any further updates on where that proposal sits at the moment because we are going through that mediation process, but the council will be open to all development initiatives that may look for the best outcome for our community. But yeah, so currently just going through that legal mitigation that we're as a contract doing in good faith.
So no timeline?
No, not at this stage, just engaged in the process. But as councillors, I think that we all have the accelerated view that we want this to be resolved as quickly as possible. And this also doesn't mean that any further development, once through this process or as we go through it, can't also be expressed and explored. But yeah, just no further commentary around it as we go through that.
That's all right. I'll ask every fortnight
That's
that
okay.
I'm in Launceston. Let's try and get some answers. And look, with your indulgence, I did leave one question.
Yes.
It just came to me as I've been dealing with this. As 10% owners of the Launceston Airport, have you had any discussions with the airport regarding the cessation of the shuttle service?
Sure. Well, this is something that we can take on notice to have a little bit of a further investigation into, noting that, as you've mentioned, Hobart has one every 30 minutes or so forth. There would be reports and work that would be done as to the frequency, how well that has been attended and what that would look like for Launceston. So I personally haven't been involved in that specific conversation, but that's not to say that there haven't been internal conversations around a shuttle bus at the Launceston
Well,
Airport.
it's just that I have been in conversation with the Launceston Airport and Kinetic, and I just wondered whether, as 10% owners, whether you had been involved as well. Sure. Perhaps it's a later date, I'll fill you in then if council
Sure.
hasn't been dealing with it, the fact that Launceston has had no shuttle bus now for considerable time. So you've been aware of the fact that there's no shuttle bus from the airport to Launceston?
As a frequent user of the airport, I understand that there isn't one. Yes,
Yeah.
In my personal experience, I haven't been aware of why or what the implications of that were or why that was terminated. But
I just thought, as I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but as 10% owners of the airport, I just thought the council would have actually been involved. That's all right, I've been involved.
We'll take it on notice. As like you've mentioned, the 10% will understand what our obligations and requirements are for information and how they've engaged us or not. But like I said, just me personally, I have to take it on notice because I'm not saying that there hasn't been officers that have been involved in this conversation. I can speak as a councillor that is heavily involved in the operational side of the airport itself. But yes, I just have to take it on notice.
No disrespect to yourselves or the councillors, Mayor. As I said, I've been involved, so I'll fill you in later with what's happening. But I just thought maybe we might need the council to come on board as well to pursue it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions from the floor? Thanks, Rosie.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Robin Smith. I work in a business called Coffee Republic in the Brisbane Street Mall. I might do the easy question first. Previously, I asked a question about disabled parking, 7th of December 2023, and the use of voucher Australian disability parking disability permits. On the council's website, it does say that the council gives disability permits, or you can apply for a 1-year temporary permit. When you look at the website, it isn't quite clear that there is a concession on there. Well, it's clear there's a concession of time. You can add to the time you park, which obviously is to facilitate you needing to take longer walks slower. What it doesn't say is there's a concession, if I'm right, that additional time you're allowed is time that is free, of no cost, the extra allowance. If I have that correct, if I do, it's not implicit, or it's not even implied in the council's website. Is that something council could look at? The word I'm looking for, I suppose, is that the concessional time is free, the word free, F-R-E-E. Is that something council could look at? If I've got it right.
Yeah, no, we can.
Some people pay, and that's the confusion.
Yeah, no, we can absolutely have a look into that. And I thank you for following up the question and the work that our customer service team had done yesterday in looking into the information, which I was then brought to the attention of the little flyers that are there. But we can definitely have a look into how clear that might be and where the state government play in the roles of facilitation and our permanent residents that require those and our users, and those that have the temporary ones that perhaps come through correspondence at council.
So my inquiries yesterday at the counter made it back to you, did they?
Yes.
Ah, right. Okay. I asked a question during the pandemic. I think it was about homeless people. There was a couple of questions I asked. This is 6th of October 2021. No, it wasn't, I beg your pardon. It was 30th April 2020. The third question about the homeless was asked and an answer was given. And I wondered today, from now on with the adoption of the this new policy, how differently would this individual be treated? And I'll ask the question again. And if you could tell me how differently today council would get involved in dealing with this homeless person. The question was, this is from the 30th of April 2020, there is also the matter of a South Korean tourist who has been living rough in the city centre for approximately 10 months now. His return air ticket has expired. He apparently doesn't possess the financial means to return to his native country. He's now facing his second winter living in the open. He's too assuming to ask for help, not eligible for most, and appears to be trapped in somewhat of a state of limbo. In previous council meeting, 5 or 6 months ago perhaps, I raised his matter and coincidentally indicated that he was living in the adjacent grounds behind the council building we're meeting. Can he be helped by council police? So today, if I were to ask that same question, the same individual is still in Launceston. I saw him a week ago, so it's about over 5 years he's been living rough on council property. I won't say where he is now, but he's on a council reserve, has been a long time. How differently would that be? If this were adopted today, how differently would he be treated, and what could council do for him, as an example, please?
Sure. Well, I'd be very confident in the way in which our inclusion officer and our policies have been guiding the direction that the community is asking further and further support for. As to where the circumstances sound now, I would have to have further information around if it was exactly the same situation as before, but I would be quite confident in the way in which our officers and our team deal on that names basis, that dignity first, and we have been very vocal around we don't move people on because we don't have a place to move them to, and putting the wraparound services around them in their current situation. So I would feel confident in the way it would still be dealt with in very similar manners. And now that we're just bringing out this motion today to put further confidence into the community around how our decision-making will go forward. And as a live document for our agenda today, I look forward to further conversations from councillors around what the interpretation of that looks like in said situations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as an aside point, I would like to speak to that motion if it's still on the agenda today. I didn't nominate that. I would like to speak to it, please. When
Thank
it's
you. Yes, there will be.
Thank you. Third question. This arises because Council is working on City Heart Stage 2 project, which ostensibly is St John Street, end of the redevelopment. I asked a question 6th of October 2021. I asked, is my understanding correct that the Launceston Central Bus Interchange Options Technical Feasibility Assessment only looks at moving one bus stop, known as B1, formerly known as E and F, and essentially I described at the time that it was on the west side of St John Street. On St John Street, between York and Brisbane to Deshana Way, and not those on the other side of the street, outside Cotton On. That arose because that document was identified to me by Council as being the raison d'etre for the street changes. That document was identified to me the same day in a notice of motion, a notice, question on notice. But when I read the document, I still can't find anything in the document. On the contrary, it seems to explicitly look at scenarios for St John Street of moving the buses. Everything in the document seems to be only looking at one side of the street, two bus stops, not that side that's Cotton On. So when it gives its passenger loadings, lengths of parking required, vehicle movements, traffic light changes, and the suburbs that the buses are going to, nothing in the document indicates any other bus stop other than those, as I indicated, which were E and F. I think it's now called B1 and B2. So am I misreading the document, or does it just only look at 50% of the buses in St John Street? Because I understand that it clearly says City Prom Stage 2 intends to move 100% of the buses.
Okay.
Is the document wrong? Am I misreading it?
Having not been in this position in 2021, I would have to ask for some further guidance from the acting CEO, but I know the conversations that we're having with the state government has been based around looking at those different alternatives. There's been a lot of work done since that time. So if I could ask the acting CEO for some further clarity on something from 2021.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Smith. I'll have to go through it because I can't put all the pieces together in my head as you're asking the question, so happy to go through it with you. I must say, we do understand that last election the state government made a $12 million commitment to public transport in Launceston, so we're looking forward to working in partnership with the state around what that may look like.
Sure. Thank you. But the question is...
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No further questions from the floor? Okay, moving through to agenda item 9 and 10. We have no petitions as a part of today, no deputations as a part of today's agenda. In 11, Planning Authority. So under the provisions of the Land Using Act and approvals of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regards to this. We have no DAs for Planning Authority today. Announcements by the Mayor at 12 and 12.1. You'll see them published there in the agenda. Councillors' reports at 13. Would we like to have some councillor reports today? Councillor Kai.
Thank you. On the 5th of June, Councillor Britton and I attended the Emergency Management and Recovery Forum at the Tramshed Function Centre, organised by the Local Government Association Tasmania. The forum's purpose was to provide professional development for elected representatives and council staff, focusing on supporting communities before, during and after disasters. In attendance were elected representatives and council staffs from 19 different Tasmanian councils, including our City of Launceston Council's Social Recovery Officer, Diane Morrison, and Emergency Management Advisor, Linda Robbins. This event highlighted how critical it is to have strong connections both within communities and across different areas to ensure that emergency preparedness, response and recovery efforts are effective. 5 speakers shared their experiences with various types of disasters, including bushfire, storm, flood and the tragic incident at Hillcrest Primary School. This was a valuable opportunity for us to learn from past events and identify ways to reduce risks and prepare for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of activities. I attended the launch of the Tasmanian Architecture Awards on the 30th of May. They were launched here in Launceston. Whilst the awards are for new builds or also modifications of existing buildings throughout the state, it is always interesting to talk to the architecture cohort or community about how great Launceston's architecture is and how more must be done to make sure that we do retain what we have. And that doesn't just mean those buildings that have been classified as historic or whatever under previous planning schemes up to about 1900, 1920, but everything since then. So it was a great launch, and I think it's now moved, the exhibition of the people who've put their nominations has now moved to Hobart, unfortunately. So it's a bit late to go and have a look now, but it was in the Brickworks in Brisbane Street. Yourself and I joined a couple of T-Bug members on Monday, the 3rd of June. And we had, in fact, it was a 17-kilometre ride for me by the time I got home. So we rode around the city with the T-Bug members pointing out the many and varied obstacles to encouraging more people to ride their bikes. So hopefully that was something you enjoyed, and certainly they took me to a few places that I hadn't anticipated in where they see making cycling a part of everyone's, I guess, activities, and the ability to ride to work as a standard thing rather than everyone jumping in the car. So their time was appreciated by myself and yourself, I'm sure. And Thursday was pretty busy. We had a pay-it-for breakfast where I was, I think, filling in for yourself. That was run by the City Mission in their annual fundraiser prior to the end of the financial year, as well as attending the Premier's mid-year cocktail party put on by the Chamber of Commerce, which was a great opportunity to talk to some of our business leaders about many council activities. And finally, on Saturday, we were out at York Park watching Hawthorn and GWS to what was probably agreed to be one of the more exciting games that have been out there at UTAS Stadium, even if Hawthorn did win and I was going for GWS. But apart from that, that's me.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And thank you, Susie. I think she's explained we did go to the Emergency Management and Recovery Forum. I'd just like to highlight there are a couple of speakers who really sort of resonated with me. Bree Hunter from the Clarence City Council. She actually works for the Hobart Council as well, but they do a thing called Sparking Conversations and Igniting Action, which is work in bushfire resilience in the greater area of Hobart. Excuse me. Some of the things that they're doing are door knocking to get the conversation started surrounding how people can be more resilient. They've developed 4 buildings, 2 houses and 2 other buildings that have been retrofitted with equipment which is going to help them in a bushfire. They're doing research into fire-safe plants. They're organising messaging groups with different groups so they can get real-time updates on what's happening. They're planning escape routes, and they're just generally out in the community exposing it and engaging with them, to help for what is going to be an inevitable one day. Another speaker that I have to thank is Karen Hampton from the Devonport City Council. She was the Community Services Manager there during and after the Hillcrest tragedy. And for me, she highlighted not just the obvious roles of planning and providing tangible solutions and strategies, but being active and present in the social recovery of the community, providing ongoing support to those people who have been impacted by the events in ways insurance companies and money will never fix. And just last, I know we're doing some work at the moment and we'll continue to do some work about flood and resilience and things like that. And ultimately, one thing that came out of the day is that the community will no doubt look to us as leaders, educators and truth tellers during these times. Our information must be evidence-based and up-to-date, and our community will expect us to do all we can to help them be ready. We must be diligent in both preparation and response and be present in all areas of the resulting recovery. Thanks again, Telegraph from the data. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And like you, I attended the long walk and the Aboriginal roundup at Rocherlea Football Club 2 weeks ago. And I just really wanted to pay great respect to Graham Gardner, who led that day, and how the sensitivity of how dealing with all those sorts of things was done, and his inclusion policy, because he actually also brought along the Tasmanian inclusion team, which won the National Carnival last year because they'd had no place to celebrate their win. So he thought, what a better place to do that than at the Rochelle Football Club on Aboriginal round. And I thought it was a great day where I think inclusion at its best.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McMahon?
Thank you. As you are aware, on the 22nd of May, I proposed that Council support the facilitation of a round-the-table discussion with appropriate stakeholders to tackle the escalation of antisocial behaviour in our CBD. I would firstly like to thank the Acting CEO and GM community in place for their quick response and arranging a meeting with the Acting Commander of Police to discuss how best Council can assist in regards to better lighting, ensuring current CCTV is up to standard, amongst other things. I'd also like to thank the Acting CEO for including Frederick Street in those discussions at my request, even prior to business owners attending our last meeting, given the area has had ongoing issues for quite some time. Both myself and local business owner Luke Dawson have met with Inspector Craig Fox and have arranged to meet on a regular basis to ensure we are having ongoing conversations. We also met with the Acting Commander Nathan Johnson, Simon Wood MP, Minister Felix Ellis and the Minister's Police Advisor. Our discussion included police numbers, response times, legislation changes, local deterrent strategies and new early intervention programs. We expect to meet with Minister Jentzsch in the near future for further discussions. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge local business owner Luke Dawson for the many years of work he has done in this space and the dedication and support he continues to provide to our local business community around antisocial behaviour initiatives and prevention. And lastly, tomorrow is World Blood Donor Day, and I will be heading along to donate blood with a team from Sir Optimus International Launceston. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further councillor reports? Being none, moving forward to questions by councillors at 14.1. 14.1.1, we have a question on notice from Councillor Harris around the bike centre at the Transport and Road Safety Centre and Recreational Reserve. Also a question from Councillor Gibson at 14.1.2, the 25th Symposium of Australian Gastronomy, Launceston Flood Authority, Burke Street premise, and that was on the 3rd of June. And we move forward to now 14.2, which is questions without notice. Councillors, questions without notice? Councillor Pentridge.
I'm not going to be long-winded about this, but Saturday was a fantastic day at footy. For lots of reasons. A lot of people and children had a great day. I was somewhat disappointed. The question I'm asking, I'm more than happy to have it given to me back in writing, is did we put parking staff on to surround UTAS and fine people for parking illegally, which to me is disappointing. We do a lot of work to try and encourage people to participate and enjoy facilities like football. It just seems like a bit of a dampener that they have to come back to their cars and find infringement notices. And I don't know that we really need it. We're going to encourage people to participate. And that's one. And the other thing is, my understanding was that the planning department set about deciding that they were going to rezone some land out at Merino Street. I'm just wondering on what authority, who do they ask, or does the planning department simply do what it wants to do when it wants to do it? So if someone could come back to me and can just cover, on whose authority did they take that on board, which is a totally different thing from if the owners of the land want to rezone, then they should go through the appropriate channels like everyone else has to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. And yes, we can provide some responses to you, but just around the parking in particular, I saw quite a bit of conversation around social media and how many spots there were still remaining in the free car park that is on the other side that was provided on Forster Street. and even to the point where I was talking to our customer service team yesterday, the response from the community was pictures of people who had parked over people's driveways and the infringements that they were receiving in that respect. It seemed to be a lot more positive in calling out the behaviours of those doing the wrong thing, but we definitely need to have a bit of a look into make sure that the report that you might be getting back from the community reflects the position of what was actually happening in the council. So, yeah, thank you for that question too. And noting that we've had a presentation with Merino Street, we can provide some further information around how the owner of that land has approached council to try and work with them for quite a difficult parcel. So thank you for your questions. Any further questions without notice? Okay, there being none, we'll move forward to notices of motion at 15. 15.1, notice of motion establishing an inclusion action plan and community consultation by Councillor Dawkins. Now, before we get to the recommendation, Councillor Dawkins, I believe that we do have some speakers here today as well. I can go through the list that I've been provided, or please just feel free at your own leisure in your own order to make your way to the microphone. We just need your name and just your suburb. Great.
Hello, I'm Eddie Kidd and I'm from Beaconsfield. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Eddie Kidd and I'm a trans man from the West Tamar region. I've spent a lot of my time in and around Launceston and the greater community. I've attended my college years in Launceston, work and spend a lot of my free time here in the city. During my time at Newstead College, they established a weekly Pride group that encouraged queer students to meet, make friends and talk about our experiences. It created a safe space that felt supportive, allowed for us to connect and be a part of the community. During Newstead openly showing their support through raising the rainbow flag allowed newer and returning students to know that their school supported them and would stand by them. This was not a costly venture for Newstead College and created a large impact on the well-being of the queer students. This small act of inclusion allows for LGBTQIA+ students to feel connected to their community, create friendships and learn about the services and things we have already established here in Launceston. This is incredibly important because of the long history of discrimination, attacks, stigma and exclusion that individuals have faced and continue to experience, including within schools. It truly makes a real difference to queer people when they are overtly welcomed and included. Because Launceston isn't visibly proud of the community it has, a lot of young people are disconnected and do not feel safe here. Tasmania has a long history of violence and prejudice against the LGBTQIA+ community, and why we may have not lived through the worst of it, those attitudes and our ideals are still prevalent within the community, within the city and rural communities. I've heard many horrible experiences from young people about the way they have been treated here in Launceston, and I have many of my own stories. Many avoid going out to drinking establishments in fear of confrontation, and even in daylight, many still avoid areas where there will be large groups due to previous experiences of verbal abuse. For example, I have been screamed at from trucks and vehicles by grown men. I've had slurs thrown in my face from large groups of teenage boys for simply walking past. I have had groups of people take videos and photos of my friends and I while ordering food and loudly talking about how they felt about us. This, over periods of time of the same treatment, affects anybody's mental health and discourages young people from wanting to be active in the community, as they are not seeing anyone who supports them or are willing to stand up for them. Now more than ever, we need visible allies. With social media and the internet, we are seeing across the globe various governments restrict the rights of the LGBTQI+ community and increasing amounts of online homophobia and transphobia. That increases the feeling of uncertainty, especially as Launceston has not been vocal with its support. It is one thing to say yes on paper to supporting our community, but as we have seen, there's been silence on these matters and yet a lack of action. Representation matters. Being able to see yourself and others visibly supported and having a city that is proud to have you a part of the community is very important for the well-being of queer people. For so long, I had no idea that we have such a vibrant community because it was either hidden, not spoken about, or you had to know someone who knows someone. It was a very isolating and lonely experience, and I was disconnected from my community for a long time. Until recently, where I have managed to make friends and connections by accessing queer-focused spaces and events. These communities that I have become a part of have largely improved my mental health, gave me a sense of belonging and a great support network. Launceston could be engaging and working alongside existing organisations to promote and spotlight these events more. Raising the rainbow flag as a symbolic gesture of your support for the community, and it is a cost-effective way to show the commitment to working alongside each other. There is no cost to listen, and it costs nothing to speak to the community about our concerns. A round table would be a great start, so the community feels heard, having their complaints and concerns taken seriously. This is important as the LGBTQI+ community faces unique issues and problems that can't be addressed by combining our issues with other groups. By having these conversations, it shows that you are active with engagement of the LGBTQI+ community and are willing to work alongside queer community members to develop an action plan that supports the queer community and addresses the ongoing issues. Involving community members with the development of an action plan will help defray costs. Instead of driving social division that is already prevalent thanks to prejudice, discrimination and hate, this is about healing that division by standing up for those who are facing the discrimination and by ensuring everyone is treated with the same level of respect. LGBTQI+ inclusion will boost Launceston's image and reputation, which in turn will encourage more people to live, work and invest into the city and community. Launceston could be seen as the forefront of progression in the north and become an example for rural communities to follow. So please support Councillor Andrea Dawkins' motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Further speakers? We want to go Joseph, Bradley or Timothy? Might need some help with that one, Councillor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all good. We'll make it work. So Joseph McLennan from Deloraine. Just want to say good afternoon to everyone and elected members. My name is Joe. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a queer man, raised as a Catholic in Deloraine, schooled in Devonport, don't hold that against me, and I'm someone who has lived, studied and worked in Launceston on and off for several years. Launceston is and always will be a special place for me. I first moved to Launceston in 2007 to attend the University of Tasmania. This was my first introduction to a secular education. It was my first time meeting and befriending queer people. Unlike what I had been taught my whole life, these people were good, decent people who strive to live fulfilling and happy lives. Of course, it took me another year and a bit to fully understand what this meant for me. These people were good people, so if being gay didn't make someone bad, did that not mean it was okay to be gay? My previous life experience had informed me of the contrary. I had been told God had punished gay men by creating AIDS. I had a family member threaten to shoot me and my brothers if any of us turned out like that. Will and Grace happened to be on TV at the time. I could discuss the many aggressions and traumas that shaped my nervous system growing up, how my survival instinct was set to reject anything queer, as to even show an interest might make people think I was gay. I was aware people were brutally killed for being gay, the story of Matthew Shepherd fresh on my mind. Every now and again, my queerness would creep into my consciousness, and I would force it back down. It was just the devil testing me, I would tell myself, lacing up my runners and running until the thoughts went away. Spoilers, they never did. Coming out at 21 is still the most stressful and agonising experience I've had. Being a queer man in a community that has historically bashed, bullied, isolated, excommunicated, and lawfully imprisoned queer people is a terrifying thing. And yes, all these things happened in Launceston, and some of them continue to happen. The Life in Mind Suicide Prevention Knowledge Exchange portal highlights the following protective factors for LGBTIQI+ people. Feeling included and safe in all communities. Community connectedness. The right to practice culture and apply cultural protocols. The ability to affirm gender identity within community. These are all things that can be fostered in our community by the leadership of the Launceston City Council. I currently volunteer and work across 3 LGBTIQI+ organisations. I see how hard our community works to create safe spaces, but I know just a simple act of our local council taking proactive actions to demonstrate we are valued members of Launceston's community. This would do more good and provide more healing for Launceston than my efforts ever will. Please support Councillor Andrew Dawkins' motion. I'm eager to see Launceston lead the way in the north of the state, creating a roundtable where together we can develop an LGBTIQA+ action plan, joining forward-thinking and proactive councils like Hobart and Kingsborough, creating a Launceston that not only tolerates and supports, but embraces and celebrates LGBTIQA+ diversity, all its strengths, resilience, creativity, and drive that we bring to Launceston. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joseph.
Bradley Cullen, Kiggs Meadows. Dear councillors and members of Launceston City Council, I am Bradley Cullen, a proud member of the LGBTQ+ community. I'm a father, a businessman, and a resident of Launceston. Today I stand with you with a call to action, a plea for inclusivity, a vision for more, and just to be accepted in general by the city. For 26 years of my life, I suppressed my sexuality, faced bullying in school, discrimination within the church, and lived within a society that didn't recognise love between the people of same gender. The journey of self-acceptance has been tainted by pain and trauma. At 18, I experienced a sexual assault that left me shattered and ashamed. Before I come out, I fully didn't grasp the reality of discrimination or homophobia. On February 28th, 2023, I was violently assaulted, thrown against a car, then to the ground, then called that I would be an embarrassment to my children, and also implied that I had AIDS. Worst of all, I was told to do exactly the same thing that his gay son did, commit suicide. I reported it to the police. I got a restraining order, but I was given no resources and no support. No follow-up, no guidance, just a case number. It took 17 months to even get my case in front of a judge for an assault. Seeking justice through the legal system was a lonely journey. With no support or resources, the trauma that I endured, the lack of LGBTQ+ friendly counsellors or support groups left me isolated, struggling to make sense of the pain that lingered within me. The motion before us today is crucial for our community, for equality and inclusion. Other Tasmanian communities have taken steps. It's time for Launceston to follow suit. By convening a round table of the LGBT+ residents and allies, we can create an inclusion plan, an action plan that actually benefits all of us. As we approach Pride Month, let us celebrate the LGBT+ community and acknowledge their struggles. It's time for Launceston to take action and create an inclusive environment where we all actually feel valued. I urge you to consider and foster the inclusion and equality for the LGBT+ individuals in our city by sending a message of acceptance where we can actually improve our lives and contribute to the growth of Launceston. Let us stand united in our commitment and diversity and equality. Thank you for your time, your dedication to building a more inclusive future of our city. Thanks.
Thank you, Bradley. Okay. Well, thank you, speakers. Moving to the recommendation that the Launceston City convene a roundtable of LGBTIQA+ residents and their allies to discuss and recommend further action by the city to foster equality and inclusion with the goal of developing an inclusion action plan. Councillor Dawkins to move, someone to second. Councillor McMahon. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Eddie, Joseph and Bradley, and I want to pay particular tribute to Bradley's speech today. That inclusion in this has really been sobering, I think, and brought home the reality of this circumstance for our diverse community, the challenges that people still face, shock, bewilder, and sadden me to my core. So sharing something as deeply personal as that in a room like this is a very masculine colonial space. And we're asking you here today to come and talk about your gender identity, your sexuality and your experiences of life. This is something that we do not usually experience. We're here to talk about commercial aspects of city life. We talk about a lot of other things. We'll be talking about homelessness today, but it's certainly an insight into how difficult life can be for many people. You can never tell from the inside, from the outside, what somebody's life is truly like. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing that with us today. We're here today to make a decision, to right or wrong, to move forward as a community and as a council, to include an inclusion strategy in our suite of strategies, of which we have many. I've said in the past, I'm nervous about bringing more because I know that some of the strategies we've already aligned to and agreed to have not seen the light of day, but I could not wait another day to bring this motion. I kept waiting for the appropriate moment. I've been waiting for about 10 years now, and I couldn't wait anymore. And it was Rodney Croom who approached me and said, it's time to do this, Andrea. And he's absolutely right. And if he hadn't prompted me, I still would have been waiting for that day, and I might have left at any elected representative role without ever making a foray into this space. I do not have to negotiate or explain to you my bona fides in this place. I have a broad family experience. We have bisexual people, we have openly queer people, we have accepted trans children. We are that panopticon of this rich life experience. I'm the first generation where we didn't have to negotiate that. We do not have to negotiate this in my family. Whatever someone stands up and tells us they are, we know that's who they are, and that's the end of it. And we all get on with our lives. We are the first generation to be able to do this. And that's because of the incredible education and opportunities we've had. We've been able to broaden our minds through reading, through travel, through experience. You know, I come from an old Tasmanian family who were very steadfast to this place and very, ill-equipped to learn. But one generation, it's a huge shift, and a shift I'm so immensely proud of. I watched The Giants this week, the Bob Brown documentary, and I saw Rodney. I forgot that he was in that, and I saw that arrest, the Salamanca arrests, as they're known. So important to Tasmania. It's our Stonewall moment. And there's so many similarities between the way Bob and Rodney go about their business. They are immensely intelligent, quite private people who have been thrust through their passion for life and to help their communities to speak up and become global innovators and globally important individuals. I know how proud you all are of Rodney. He has been the backbone of our diverse community in a way that I don't think anybody could ever take any umbrage. He is a true leader. And that's why we're here today, to make this decision on whether we include in our suite of strategies an inclusion policy. Now, whether we do that with a roundtable first, whether we come up with some guidelines and framework to what that might look like and then go out to consult the community, I think that's secondary. We will sort that out as we go. We are here today to make a stand and say it's important that we understand some of the complexities and some of the concerns that we've heard here today. Now, my name is Andrea. My pronouns are she and her, but I'm super happy to be they. I love they. 2019, when the Merriam-Webster Dictionary named they as the word of the year, I thought that is genius. That is where we all need to be heading. And I know that some people struggle with that, but gosh, it's a small step to really bring an inclusivity to language. And I really applauded what's traditionally a very conservative authority like a dictionary to be able to say, this is the word that we think is the most important word this year, and there's going to be so much more of this as we move through to understand that, you know, people are a rich tapestry, their experiences and who they identify as. I might be this today, but I want to be allowed to, in 10 years, to be something different. Who does that affect but me? Why can't we have that fluidity in who we are? I can't wait for the day where you don't have to come out and don't have to go through that experience. We don't, as straight people, have to come out and say, I'm straight, I have sex, I'm a human. We don't have to do that, but we're asking for this segment of our community to talk about their sexuality in a way that is so burdensome. So I look towards a community where that's not going to happen, and this is a small step along that way. So thank you. I look forward to the contributions of this table, and I'll close and I'll talk more about the specifics based on what's been said today, but I'm really proud to be here and I thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor McMahon is the second.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on today and speaking your truth. That would have been very difficult, I would imagine. So thank you very much. I stand as the seconder of this notice of motion, and I am driven to speak from the heart, given I have many friends who are part of the LGBTQAI+ community. They are not just my friends, but they are my family. My mind goes back to our recent workshop on Aboriginal culture awareness and the most amazing presentation by Dwayne Everett-Smith. The learnings from that day had a profound effect on me personally. Ashamedly, I had never sought out to learn the real truth, and to think it was 1967 when voters acknowledged our First Nations people deserved equal constitutional rights. 1967. This is appalling that they had to wait that long. But I have to say that my ignorance or lack of standing up to be counted plays its part. I have vowed to do better. We are still in a world where those in perceived positions of power have control over so many gender disparities on a small and large scale. Social justice is built on the pillars of human rights, equity, participation and access. When a society is just, everyone is respected, supported and protected. If as a council we can make a small step in the direction of social justice for our LGBTQAI+ community, then we are making a huge step towards addressing social justice issues that affect our community, and we can continue to learn from past mistakes and move towards equality. All members of our community should be able to contribute, participate, move freely and safely within our community and to feel seen, heard and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. And again, I'd just like to acknowledge the bravery and courage of those that came and spoke today. And I'd have to say, standing here, I'm saddened that you haven't and don't feel supported in the community in which you live and work. I probably stand here as somebody who would typecast me as a conservative, middle-aged, white, maybe the old, white male person. So therefore, comments I might make might not sound fitting for somebody who's been defined in that way. I, like Councillor McMahon and Councillor Dawkins, I have many friends in the LGBTIQA+ community, and I value their friendship. I spoke earlier about the Aboriginal round and inclusion group that came to Rochely Football Ground last week. They were embraced. I read in the paper today Peter Gutwin doing a walk from Burnie to Hobart for inclusivity for our migrant populations. I'm a person who views everybody as being equal in value, and I don't judge them on their race, colour, or how their beliefs or their sexuality. And I believe our community should embrace on that, because I think all you're looking for is for respect, comfort to be the people that you are, be valued for who you are. We're a multi-factored society, and that plays out every day in what we do. Our website talks about a kind of community, something that we really express that I think we should live, and I think we should do that in every day and everything that we do. And I know how challenged Andrea was in many ways, just purely from a personal point of view, to stand up and do this, and I love the way that she shows the passion that she does in regards to sort of standing up for things like this because they're so important to her. And just what I've learnt from her over the many years in the way that she manages that, challenges herself with all those sorts of things in itself is enough for me to stand up and support the motion here today. But the reality of it is it's out there for the whole community, for us to get out there and embrace the fact that we're all different. There are lots of things that my wife doesn't like that I do. There are lots of things out there that we do different to other people, but we accept and we include. And that's what we need to do as a community. So I am 100% behind the intent of this motion and hope that the rest of the table will see fit to support it as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the previous councillors who had their prepared notes, and I probably should have prepared something better, but I'll just have to speak somewhat off the cuff. I also want to say thank you to Eddie, Joe and Brad for your personal stories of what life is like here in Launceston. I also have many members of my friends and family that are members of the LGBTIQA+, and I was asked to make sure I get that right, community, because we do need to be inclusive of everyone. It's very important that everyone feels safe, supported and respected for who they are here in this community of Launceston. Hobart already has an inclusion statement, Hobart, a city for all, their community inclusion and equity framework. As may well be different to that, and how it goes from this point forward will be up to those who sit around the table in that initial time. But it is very important that we do. Many people may say, why are council being involved with this? I remember very clearly during the what was known as the gay marriage vote in 2017, when my Rotary Club president, Rick Martin, led not only our Rotary Club during that year, but also the Northern Tasmanian response, or if you like, for the positive case. An extremely difficult time for Rick, but he came out the end of it, and the world did not end simply because we approved gay marriage. And so it is with this. I do hope that this does not sit on a shelf and gather dust, but actually has a strategy that has something worthy to bring and changes community attitudes, because we need to change community attitudes, as Brad has so graphically said. And I'll just finish by reading out of the notes, and that is one of the recommendations from the University of Tasmania survey that says we must embrace LGBTIQA+ Tasmanians as valued members of a community who require equal dignity, respect and recognition. And I'm very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge, then Councillor Gibson.
There's not a lot I can say, and my colleagues have said it. I apologise to you, your family. Nobody has the right to be made feel like you was. I'm disappointed it's taken so long for you to get some support. But can I remind you that our Indigenous brothers have taken a long, long time before they got a sorry. Only hollow words, but so I apologise for me. I'm quite sure that most people would feel the same. But you have achieved something through that humiliation that you were put through. You've heard what everyone's got to say, and we are moving forward. You know, be a little bit forgiving. We've got a long way to go. You know, but I'm sure we'll get there one day and respect everybody for them, not for what they perceive to be. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, and it is a pleasure to follow Councillor Pentridge on this occasion with the words that he so eloquently shared and so heartfully shared. This motion before us is the first time since 2015 that we as a council will consider an action directly impacting our LGBTIQA+ community. And that 2015 moment is something that I've been challenged with since March 10 of that year. In 2015, when this council debated supporting marriage equality, I froze with my decision. I was afraid and I said nothing, not one word. I was silent and then I chose to abstain from the vote, and the vote was lost. Despite the toxic plethora of emails and letters that we had received, and indeed the same kinds of things behind the comments that the experience that Bradley shared, yet still I said absolutely nothing. And I've regretted that decision many times in the years that have followed. I upset and lost friends as a result of my inaction. It was the wrong decision, and it was a weak lack of decision on my part. But the truth is, the very reason that I was afraid to speak in 2015 is the exact reason that we as a council needed to support marriage equality then, and it is the precise reason that we need to support our LGBTIQA+ community now. My decision in 2015 sent a hurtful message to the LGBTIQA+ community, and particularly to the young gay people growing up in Launceston. Today's decision is one of inclusivity. It's a minimum standard. It's a catch-up. And I note the officer comments. But what I say is that asked of us today is not much really. Probably all that we're seeking to achieve is actually nothing more than the largest council in the state should be doing. And I actually think it's been the QV MAG here at the City of Launceston that's shown the most leadership in this space with their recent programmatic offerings, and I thank them for that. But as we've heard today, the stigma, the labels, the names, the homophobia, the statistics, the connotations, and the far-fetched, ill-informed comments, and the discrimination and the impact on people's lives is still prevalent. So I applaud Councillor Dawkins and I thank her as we take this very small step towards Launceston being an even more welcoming and inclusive place for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Kai.
Okay, it's my turn. And I feel like I have lots of friends and families that are in the LGBTIQ+ community. My own children are trans and pan, and I've been told to bash it out of them. That's what I've been told. So sometimes my daughter has a tag that says he, him, that's his pronouns. And yeah, people say to me, you know, I need to bash it out of them because they're abnormal, they're normal, not normal. But hearing Bradley's story reminds me of a very good friend of mine who was always very happy, cheerful. I say was because one night when he finished work, he was in hospitality as well. He was bashed to death on his way home. So this sort of brings a lot of emotion, and I would just like to say that I don't ever want to see or hear any of that happening to anybody, whether it's my own family or friends or even just anybody in the community. So I fully support Councillor Dawkins' motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I stand here today to fully support this notice of motion brought on by Councillor Dawkins and seconded by Councillor McMahon. I'm going to keep my contribution short because the speakers before me have spoken very well and I endorse everything that they've all had to say. To Eddie, I say this, I'm a visible ally. I stand here today as a visible ally. To Joseph, I say to you, I want this to be a place where we all belong. To Bradley, I stand united. I stand here today to fully support everything that is before us in this motion. And I too have many, many friends in the LGBTQI+ community. And I want them to hear loud and clear that I stand by them, stand with them, and I will support them with everything I've got. Thank you very much.
Councillor Palmer. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, it is illegal to discriminate against people on the basis of their race or their religion, of their sexuality. But does that mean it doesn't happen? Of course not, it does happen. That is probably at the heart of the problem here. I'm sure you would realise, as well as seeing around this table, that the majority of people in our community, of course, support our diverse community, our rainbow community. Avoid all the acronyms for a second, if I may. But that, as I say, doesn't mean that that racism, that bigotry, that hate doesn't happen, that those crimes don't happen. Of course it doesn't mean that. What does stop those things is strong legislation and legislators who will step up and do the work that needs to be done. I remember reading an article by an American rights activist, black rights activist, talking about the 1960s when African Americans wanting to, access universities and things like that, they were spat upon, and they were beaten, and all sorts of things happened. But what changed was the federal government there brought in legislation and brought in the punishments necessary to make it so that those people just learned to shut up. They just learned that they cannot do that. They didn't necessarily change their opinions, but they learned to keep them to themselves. And that's the process, I suppose, of change at work. It's the process that we're experiencing in our society at the moment. And if there's one thing that I may sort of somewhat disagree with the mover of this motion, it's that this chamber, is to be described as a patriarchal and colonial chamber. That is changing, and I hope you've seen that today around this table. That's definitely changing, and the diversity that's represented around this table and the personal stories that people have brought forward today, it's refreshing to hear. This chamber is changing. The nature of our community is changing. That's a heartening thing for all of us. We all stand together with our diverse community, and I will be supporting this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the other speakers and everyone who came in to share today. And look, I didn't really have anything planned, and I'd like to stand up and only apologise for my apathy in this space in my life. I don't really care at all what sexuality you are. I just see you as a person, and to hear stories like that, again, I just want to apologise for my apathy, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably feel that way. Passing something like this today, knowing that there are members of our community who do feel outcast and who don't feel like they're being listened to. Someone made the comment, and I know we argue, should council get involved in this, should council not? We are leaders of the community, and there is a large part of our community who do feel this way. So I'll absolutely support it, and thank you to everyone who's spoken.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Councillor Professor Raze.
Well, it has been really moving to hear stories from you. And even we are in 21st century, it seems that it has been going on for a long time. It's also wonderful to see passionate colleagues talking about how we need to treat everybody equally, regardless of their ethnicity, colour or gender. I also like to remind myself sometimes how Australia prides itself to be the most egalitarian fair income society, but we need to practice that and how it's about respect, but most importantly is to be nice to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raze. Councillor Dawkins to close.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful contribution from this table today. I'm not sure this is what I thought I was expecting. So it's delightful to have woken up this morning and gone, oh, what's going to happen today? You know, I was there the day that Councillor Gibson spoke about, and I'm not sure that I ever really resolved what happened that day. But I think we can draw a line under that now. We can draw a line under the way that council will respond to requests for this sort of assistance in future. I think inclusion and the way that we treat our LGBTQIA+ community or include that community has been taken as a given. You know, we do some things. We do these things. We do some things at the library. Yes, the QV Mag's done some exceptional work. We certainly, as an organisation, have no reason not to, but we just haven't stepped into this space in the way that we should have. And today, because of your insistence, gives us this opportunity to now move forward. And I'm so proud. This might be the last motion I ever bring to council. I don't know. I'm happy to hang my career on this and we can all move on. And I want to hear from you that when we do the consultation and when we do step through this process, that we have done something. We haven't just, you know, got another piece of paper with some clever words, but we've actually done something and we've all moved forward. So I thank you, and I'm really hopeful for what this can mean for this city.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. So putting it to the vote then, all those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Great. Do you guys want to stay? You want to go? Yeah. Might just take a second.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Joseph. Okay. We will continue to move forward through the agenda now at agenda item 16, which is Community and Place Network. 16.1 is the Homelessness Statement of Commitment. Before we get to movers and speakers, I will open this one up to the floor if there are any general public comments around the homelessness statement of commitment before we get to the recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to speak to this motion to support it. Not a motion, I beg your pardon. It is a motion. The adoption of this homeless statement. First thing I notice, it's still, well, if I'm correct, Tasmania was one of the last places in the Western world to legalise homosexuality. If I'm not mistaken, it's currently illegal to beg in Tasmania under the Police Offences Act 1935, Section 8, if I'm not mistaken, although there might be grounds afoot to change that, possibly. To be constructive, this document's titled Homelessness Statement of Commitment. To me, from a business point of view, and I work at a cafe in the mall, Coffee Republic, so I see probably every homeless person there is. It identifies here that there was 12 in 2016 homeless people on 57. I think you could safely say it's higher than 57 in Launceston that I consider homeless, which is why I feel this document needs to move to cover not homelessness, which to me includes someone perhaps unsheltered or couch surfing at friends, but to deal with the problem we see that I see as the most urgent of all homeless matters, which is the rough sleepers. So the 57, I'd identify that the council should perhaps focus, and I don't know whether the question I would ask is, are you going to case manage the 57 you come across? Because it seems to be orientated towards those on the street. Are you going to case manage? Are you going to have records of contact? Has with this, and I don't know, normally an officer writes a recommendation and they also say what the feedback received is. Now, that helps me know who it's been circulated to. I can't find the feedback. I don't know. Of course, we don't have as business a consultative body anymore. There's no city prom, and Launceston Central doesn't concern itself with this. It's not in its charter. But I'd like to see particularly what affects business, and the problem is the illicit behaviour. That's the behaviour that is identified as nuisance behaviour. Business is going to ask, how is this going to help council help people to avoid becoming of notice to the police and being very public and a nuisance. So that doesn't help them at all. Also, where it does talk about protocols, it doesn't seem to go here into those things that I expect to see, which are when officers are dealing with the rough sleepers, street sleepers. And it is a very traumatic thing for anyone to, because of the illnesses and the mental problems and the drug taking. What provisions for the council officers to be trained and debriefed or whatever it takes to handle their particular aspect of dealing so closely with something that is probably one of the most traumatic aspects of council business that it will ever undertake, I believe. It doesn't seem to be here, and I'd have hoped from an OHS point of view that would have been addressed. And so those are questions I don't expect an answer, but perhaps from this document, something that more directly addresses the rough sleeping aspect would be appreciated, and that is from a business point of view. So I thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I believe that councillors would have heard some of those questions and then are able to also digest and ask their own as a part of the facilitation of this process. So thank you for that. So as we move into the recommendation now as well, the recommendation is that council endorse the homelessness statement of commitment. I have the mover, Councillor Walker, who might digress into the report itself with some further work there. Seconded by Councillor Gibson. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Mr. Smith for his interest in the item on the agenda. To just address those briefly to begin with, of course, you know, Launceston Council doesn't have its own social workers who go out and counsel people who are rough sleeping. We work closely with the various services that are entrusted with that service, of which there are, you know, quite a large number of those services. People, you know, come and go as far as services go. They don't always engage in a way that might make it easier to deal with. You know, that's many and varied, I suppose. When it comes to the council's, you know, commitment to that, of course, you know, it's a bit like, well, I won't make an analogy. It's, you know, it's very much the case that a lot of money could be spent in this area. Of course, the number one issue is roofs over people's heads. That's the issue. That is the one thing that is missing. But it's also the case that sometimes people have to be managed into being able to look after themselves in their own home as well. So there's complicating factors. That doesn't mean that we don't do it. In fact, what we're heading towards with this statement of commitment is the point where we will have the information and the motivation and direction to consistently approach relevant bodies, whether it be the services that work with us, the state government or the federal government, who are putting out significant amounts of money into the housing sector at the moment, with an informed knowledge as to what we wish to achieve in Launceston. Now, you could ask anyone in the street and they'd probably all give a different answer as to how you solve homelessness. You don't actually solve homelessness, you address it. It's an ongoing problem. It's most likely going to get worse before it gets better. It's a bit like, how do you fix capitalism? It's quite difficult, really, because when it suits you, it's a great thing. When it doesn't suit you, you might, you know, decide that it's not the best system for you. In this case, housing is very expensive. It's also a shortage of housing, possibly a result of our economic system, but it's not something that council has that much of a lever to adjust. Now, the state government and the federal government do have access to the amounts of money that are required to fix these things, but we need to be informed as to how to approach that. Now, that is why I'm standing today to recommend this homelessness statement of commitment to council, because from this comes an action plan that the council can work towards year in, year out with the relevant groups as well as with the community. Of course, this did go out for public consultation for 4 weeks, so there was input from the public as well. And there is a homelessness committee, and on that there are people with lived experience of homelessness, people who have been housed, people who are successfully getting on with their lives but are able to share that experience. There are also representatives from most of the organisations in Launceston that deal directly with homelessness. But what does this actual statement achieve? Well, if you go through the statement, you can see quite clearly that it's aimed towards supporting those services, but also ultimately gathering the knowledge and, so that that response through an action plan will be appropriate for Launceston. You look at countries like Finland, where their approach has been housing first, build houses, put people in houses. Then you can deal with the issues that they might have, many and varied. This is where I suppose we differ at the moment. We don't have those houses. We don't, we are told, even have the land where we can direct people who are homeless to take shelter, whether it's in a tent or a caravan or a van or whatever. I think there's work to be done in those areas. I think there is work to be done from the council front in providing a more material response, and I don't disagree with that. If that was your intimation, that the council should work towards that. But in fact, we already do. We own a building in Kings Meadows that we now nominally lease to St Vincent de Paul Society, who are providing homelessness services through their showers and washing facilities and things like that. And of course, we are providing other services materially in terms of portable toilets, cleansing crews, and indeed, hopefully they are well trained in the areas of personal hygiene and things like that, who go out and do clean areas that have been left. Unfortunately, if you're homeless, you might not always be able to take your rubbish with you. You know, hard enough to take your possessions with you, potentially in different situations. But as I say, I do and I will push for this to lead towards greater solutions with or without the support of the state and federal government. Now, if we do it ourselves, it necessarily means that our rates will go up accordingly. If we want to find direct solutions to these problems, if you want to talk about solutions, at least address these problems, it's going to be significant costs involved. But at the same time, that's a decision that the community has to make, that if we are wanting to put money to that, yeah, there'll be dollars attached to that decision, there's no doubt. But in the meantime, with this work being done, we can approach the state and the federal government. The state government, for example, announcing building a 7-storey car parking facility at Launceston General Hospital. I can't imagine that costs any more or any less than building a 7-storey apartment building. But, you know, at the moment, from that budget, that's what they're building. These things can be done. These things are done elsewhere. And it's time for Launceston to put its best foot forward, to keep this issue firmly on the map as far as funding sources go, to find significant solutions. Because as much as I slip into the habit of talking about it as a problem and solutions, and I shouldn't, because these things won't be solved in that way. It's an ongoing situation for our society. It will continue to be an ongoing situation for our society. It's just our response to it, our intent. And when we look at what we've talked about today in terms of our intent and how we want to bring inclusion and equality to our society, well, this is about economic inclusion and equality. This is about social inclusion and equality. And we will, hopefully, through this, and I commend it to the table and certainly commend it to anyone listening, to have a look and to read through the statement of intent and to be ready to see the action plan in more detail from this council, which will include, significant amounts of money that we are putting towards various outcomes already, and hopefully more in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Gibson is the seconder.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this important work. I think for me today, the headline and the story is not that Council will vote to formally pass the Statement of Commitment. Essentially, that was already had when we received the draft. The story is about what Council does with this important tool, the lived experience and the voices that we hear, that we've heard since 2001, that have enabled us to go on this journey. They are the things that are the headliners. The people who are at risk of becoming homeless or already are homeless in our community, sleeping rough, not knowing where they're going to take their children tonight or tomorrow night to sleep. They are the stories. They are the headlines of why we're doing this, and importantly, the people who we're trying to provide a voice for through this commitment, because we know that we as an organisation do not have all of the answers to what is a multifaceted problem that requires a solution that is much larger than us. But what we do have is the opportunity to bring some of those service providers together. What we have had is that opportunity since 2001 to listen to those stories. What we do have is an incredible amount of personal experience from the organisations that we've partnered with and continue to collaborate with in this space. And what we do have now are the incredible efforts of our staff across multiple divisions and areas of the organisation who have done their darn best in this space for a number of years, sometimes well outside the purview of their original position description. So I'm incredibly proud, and I use those words only not to pat ourselves on the back, but I am proud of the organisation, because when I think back to a meeting probably only 3 or 4 years ago, where more than 30 members of our homeless community made their way to Town Hall to share their lived experience, that was the beginning of bringing all of those threads together. And we've got great intent now in wanting to bring all of the partners together in this space. The intent that has seen us form the Homelessness Advisory Committee, the intent that has seen us working with our neighbouring councils, the intent that's seeing us work towards a people-first approach with a named-based list, so that organisations who on a daily basis can share the necessary information with the clients that they're working with to ensure that they best look out for them. So I'm incredibly proud on the journey that we've taken. I'm not incredibly proud on where we're at with the solutions, because there's much more work to be done in that space. But it's okay to take time to recognise the effort that's been put in, despite the fact the numbers continue to grow. And we know the statistics. We know the fact that, for some people, 90% of their wage, not even their Centrelink payment, but sometimes their wage is required for rent. And that is the reason that they become homeless. Those stories that perhaps go against the misconception that people who are homeless don't work. We saw a story recently of a nurse in Georgetown who found herself homeless. It's very real. It affects so many people in our community. But I think what we've done here is bring all of the parts together. What I also am incredibly proud about is the inclusion of the lived experience by Rod Gardner through the imagery and the paintings that are included in the Statement of Intent. That's the headline for me. That's the headline that someone who has had lived experience would put up their hand and say, I want to be part of creating a community that makes best use of my experience for the betterment of someone else, similar to those people who, through lived experience, add their voice to the Homelessness Advisory Committee. And finally, I want to finish by saying I'm incredibly proud that this work was developed in-house. And the work through the leadership of Nindara and Linda and Michelle and the broader team is something to be celebrated. Not a consultant, not years' worth of preparation and draft, but an authentic, grounded, in-house document that those staff should be very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. And I stand by saying my 2015 moment of the previous conversation really was when the homeless people arrived at this chamber 3 to 4 years ago, probably, where it was easy for us to think that it was somebody else's problem, state government, that's nothing to do with us. There are other providers out there who do this. So I think that it was very, very easy for us to sort of sit there and say, okay, we're doing our bit, but that's not our job. That's somebody else's job. I have read that somebody said, oh, this statement of intent, it's very, very shallow and it doesn't deliver anything. I've actually read through it and I think it's actually a very good footprint, blueprint for us to work forward with because it actually enables us to do actions off the strength of the narrative that's in there. So I'm really pleased with it, and like Councillor Gibson, I'm so delighted that it was done internally with people with feeling for what it is that we're actually trying to achieve. This is a multifaceted, difficult, impossible task in many ways, what we're setting out to try and do, because without somebody just going building a house and putting somebody in it, and even that won't work because some people don't want to be in a house. And there are people who have been in houses, have moved out, they've destroyed houses, have done all sorts of things. So it is extremely complex when you've got drugs, you've got mental health, you've got domestic violence, you've got an iteration of things that actually cause people to be in the situation they're in. What I find is that we're actually engaging, we're doing the old elephant story, one bite at a time, and trying to work our way through that process. And I've heard a couple of stories about some of the people who have been homeless, which we've actually assisted in rehoming. That's a step forward. So we've actually been a positive statement in there. Now, Mr. Smith, I take your comments on board and what we need from an action point of view. And there are many people affected by it, not just the people who are homeless, it's the people who are affected in their businesses and all sorts of other places. I struggled with this whole thing when I wandered around the streets and said, I must go and talk to somebody. And I really struggled because I thought, I don't really want to ingratiate myself into there, but I got the strength to do it one day. I was walking my dogs and I got through Civic Square and there were some people arguing about that somebody had been in the front paper because they'd been under the undercroft and how dare they go on the front of the paper to talk about where they lived. Then I wandered around a bit further. I got down into the brickfields and I went up to the Polish Hall and there was somebody sitting in the Polish Hall. I said, I'm going to do something. I'm going to go over and talk to this person. I went over, so I've got no money with me, but I've got my credit card. I'm happy to go and buy you some food from Coles and bring it back. He said, mate, don't want food. Just stay here and talk to me. Now, Ron and I have an ongoing relationship. He has no idea who I am other than I'm Hugh, or he probably calls me Bill or Fred or whatever whenever I see him, and that's okay. But I stop. I take my 2 dogs. He loves patting my dogs, but he loves a conversation. That's all he wants. He chooses to be homeless, and he's made that choice. Others have got other different reasons for doing it, but I'm very pleased that I've done it because I can actually have a talk to him about it. There are days where I don't want to be talking to him about it because he's in another space. But when I go through Princess Square and he's sitting there on the chair getting ready for his daily activities, I'll go over and have a chat to him, and it's great. But what I love is that this statement of intent actually gives us the tools to say, what are we going to do next? Because nothing's limited in what that says. It's now a matter, and we've got money in the budget this year, which we probably didn't have in the budget last year, to do these things. We've got the YMCA, we're putting portable toilets out there. Are we doing enough? I'm sure if you speak to some of our people out there, no, we're not, but we are doing something, and we'll continue to refine what that is that we do to make a relevant change to what this community does and helps and whatever it is that we need to do for our homeless people. And it won't be perfect because it ain't perfect. Those people out there aren't perfect. And they won't give us a perfect solution. They'll tell us one thing but want something else. So the reality of it is going to be a changing environment that we're working in. And I thank Nindara and the team for Linda and everybody else that's been involved in this for what they've done to put this on a piece of paper. Now it's a matter of taking the piece of paper and making it into an action. And I know that we are doing it bit by bit. The Homelessness Committee is feeding into that, and all other the providers, the city missions, the Anglicares, all of those people are the people who will feed in because they do that on a daily basis in different ways. So what we now need to do is use that statement of intent to actually go out there and honestly peddle what it is that we can do within the realms of what's possible. That will change and iterate over time, I know, as the circumstances change. But I'm very proud of what we are doing today. And I say that Rod Gardner stuff through the process is just absolutely sensational. It makes me want to read it more and more. And it was great to meet him today. So I think that's great that his lived experience actually shows up on the page, and it just shows Launceston in so many ways.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Professor Arze.
Thank you very much. As a member of the Homelessness Advisory Committee, I must commend the members of the homelessness in the council for producing statement of contempt. They have made great achievements in this problem. I should remind people, as the previous speaker had mentioned, it wasn't that long, 1.5 years, September 2022, when we were campaigning for the council, how we were told the council actually consider homelessness as a complex issue, and we cannot we haven't got resources to address it. My first contact during campaigning was to go and visit Kingswharf, and there I met people. There were about 5, 6 tents. You chat to them, and you realize, gosh, there is a great thing you could do to these people. I can't forget a story by a 70-year-old woman, how she said she has to wait all night until the mornings, she can't go outside, to use the toilet because it was locked. And then things change afterward, how it's important, we can do a great deal to help them. Now, as we know, homelessness is not a simple issue. And I don't think the council have the resources to deal with it because it's a growing problem. Just to give you an example, how food insecurity, which is one of the risk factors for homelessness, how it's increased dramatically over the last 10 years. 2 years ago, they estimated nearly half of people that in Tasmania might not be able to find sometimes money to buy food. And do you know that was only 4% in 2012? That's massive, Jim. Just show you that's reflected the massive problem of cost of living. But I feel we can do a great deal by working together with the state and federal government. We can't just say, oh, we can solve the problem. Look at the state government, how committed, how much, $1.6 billion to address the issue. What about the federal government, another 6.9 billion? So the monies are there, but we can't wait for years until they build houses. Of course, that's the main solution for it. But we can use part of this money to address essential issues dealing with the people who experience homelessness now. And the council can play an active part in working with them to address these issues. I don't need to tell you, just give you an example how when 1.5 years ago, there were 5 tents, 6 months later, all the tents disappeared. So something has been done. There are many organizations that are working so hard to help. But the problem is increased dramatically. So when a year ago, suddenly we saw 13 caravans and then in the same spot. It just shows you the extent of the problem. And that's why I feel that all of us, government at all level, but most importantly, every member of the society can play a part in helping the situation by recognizing that these are human beings. They have a human right to have a house, a place to live. And most importantly, we should feel that we are caring for them. This is what Australian ethos is about, caring for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Councillor Pentridge.
Well, I totally disagree with all of it. And every single person that spoke has made some very valid points. And I agree with those 100%. But there's a cliche that says, the beginning of any journey is when you take a first step. We've been going backwards and forwards here for how many years? And personally, the last thing I want to do is get in and fix a problem. Last time I did that with the containers, it's still haunting me. Now, and I totally disagree. Today was a good day. And we had some emotional times. And you've actually, majority of us have restored my faith in this. This is as simple as we, the Aldermen, direct our CEO to direct the staff not to give us a list of all the other places that someone else should fix. Direct the staff to find a site, and I'll suggest the first one, which is down here at Foster Street, and let's change the rules. Gandhi said, if the law is wrong, change it. Now, what we should be doing, instead of talking about state government, federal government, why don't we simply work within house? The first step's got to be to give these people a bit of shelter temporarily, not to tell them that they're breaking the rules and they shouldn't be there. So let's change the rules, even if it's on a temporary basis, right? Let's give them somewhere. There's a bit where I get a bit disappointed in all this. You're missing the whole point. Until you get them together, you don't know what their problems are. And all the institutions that we've got out there, yes, they're fantastic. But this problem is growing, and the institutions that are already there are flat out catering for what they're doing, plus the new people that are coming on their books every day. So why can't we, and we here can, right? Instead of continuing to compliment everyone for giving us good excuses why we can't do it, how about we take the first step, ask our staff to temporarily rezone some of these areas for temporary facilities, let people out there who are putting a lot of money and their own money and time into these facilities, give them an opportunity to do something. But just talking about it, you're wasting the time. Well, thank you.
Councillor Pentridge, any further comments from around the table? To close then, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, through you, Chair, to Councillor Pentridge, I couldn't agree with you more. Of course, this is what I'm alluding to, I suppose, when I say that we should make a more material contribution to this situation. I do believe that Council does have the capacity to do that, but we can't do it without bringing the community along. And look, the community not only have the opportunity to contribute here, but have the opportunity to pick up the phone any day of the week and speak to a councillor or speak to the mayor and say, I want you to spend more money on homelessness. I want you to rezone a piece of land, and I want you to spend $3 million to fit that out and make sure that it's managed properly so that people can park a caravan and live there. That's all possible. It necessitates not spending money on other things, then so be it, if that's what the community want. And that's clearly what quite often we hear that in some ways it's a common sense solution. I know that we can put 100 reasons why we can't do it or shouldn't do it or won't do it, but as Councillor Pentridge, through you, Chair, says, let's work through, rather than saying that we can't do it, let's find a way that we can do it. I do want to congratulate the community because, we've all heard stories of the benevolence of our community, whether it's cafes who, give away consistently free coffees or meals or whatever it may be. That's going on continuously in our community. The community's attitudes, and part of what we're doing here with this statement of commitment is helping to communicate with the community and to educate, I suppose, so that people don't feel so threatened by something new, because people always do. If there's someone camping outside your street or your property, that's not normal. You're not used to that. So in actual fact, the amount of reporting has gone down. It's not to say the amount of people who are suffering homelessness has gone down, but the community is starting to understand that it is an ongoing situation that needs to be massaged. Yeah, of course you could round people up and drive them off somewhere else. Not really going to solve anything. You could do it. And it's unfortunate that maybe your neck of the woods is changed at the moment, but I think what people have seen is that doesn't last forever. And when there are issues where people are feeling, troubled, they are addressed. It might take a little time because we're talking about a place that someone lives, and that has to be, addressed sensitively to some degree. But let's just go through a bit of a list here with Launceston City Mission, St Vincent de Paul Society, Anglicare Tasmania, Catholic Care Tasmania, the Tasmania Police, the Salvation Army, Shekinah House, Homes Tasmania, our neighbouring councils, people with lived experience of homelessness, Homes Tasmania, Community Housing Limited, Centre Care Evolve. This is a list of some of the organisations working in this area that the council are actively working with. Then you've got other groups like Strike It Out, for example, like the Green Bean Cafe, for example, who does meals on a Friday night. People who are going far above and beyond to provide services for people in need of those. There's no shortage. The Benevolent Society also comes along. There's no shortage of groups who are funded. And when we talk about funding, we've got City Mission, who've just been given $11 million to build a 48-unit apartment block from the federal government. So things are shifting, things are changing. What that means, I think Council in this position now can actively engage with those things so that the solutions, the options that these things provide don't become contributing to further problems down the road, I suppose. That's the opportunity at the moment. At the moment, that money's not going to come directly to council, even though the federal government is working with local governments to do this, and there are opportunities that we can take advantage of. I don't think we have done that yet, but it's great to see City Mission doing it. And it's nice to think that we have the framework to build the information that we need, the data. As with anything, it's what you need. If you want to build a case for your argument, you gather the data. And that's part of what this commitment does. It helps us, because we can't just take the data from these different organisations. That's their own private data, and there are privacy issues to deal with as well. But the more that council interacts with our community of people who are homeless, the more data we can gather ourselves. That might be through our front counter, it might be through our outreach work that we do, it may be through other services that we can provide. Showers, whether it's assistance in people being able to get transport or parking and things like that. There's all sorts of ways that we're thinking about gathering that information, and with that information we can build a case where we will be able to apply for further funding. And ultimately at the top of it all, it's housing. It's housing first. That's where we need to head towards. And as frustrating as it might seem, this work is absolutely necessary. And finally, I do want to thank Nindara, who has been the prime mover behind this work, and I know that she will be leaving our organisation soon. So I thank her very much for the sort of in-depth work that she's done, as well as Linda and Michelle and Rachel Casbolt, who also comes to our meetings, as well as the leader of our community area, Chelsea Van Riek, just because Chelsea is going to put herself out there in the front line on behalf of the council in the next week or so, which we also appreciate, but because these people do go above and beyond, as has been previously mentioned, because I think everyone has the same concerns, but it's about finding those pathways forward now that I feel like we're firmly going down that path. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? All in favour? So that's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, moving through now with those amendments to the agenda to 18, Infrastructure and Assets Network. 18.1 is a proposed new street name, Fordry Court. Nobody to speak to it here, so we'll get to the recommendation that council approves the name Fordry Court to a cul-de-sac in the subdivision located at 176 Georgetown Road in Newnham. Councillor Harris has moved. A seconder, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris.
Not too much to say other than what's in the report, which indicates that Mr. Fordry was in fact the manager of Besser Bricks back there prior to up the 1980s when he left to set up Island Block and Paving, and perhaps most importantly, his family has been contacted and they are happy that his name gets remembered in such a way.
Thank you. Before we get to the seconder, who has nothing further, did you just indicate? I was just going to say there's a question for Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. This question might come across as flippant. It's not the intent. Up until very recently, there was a collection, in fact, a book that previous staff members would put together with regard to all of the historical information pertaining to streets for future generations to be able to enjoy. I think it could well be the person at the QV Mag in Mr. Smith with regard to the community collection, but could we take on notice and just check now without a manager, now without the nature of records being like it used to be, if we still do that? Because I just think in another 50 years, it would be a shame if there was a big gap in the information. I mean, we see how passionate Councillor Harris is each time there is a new street or cul-de-sac to be moved, and it would be useful into the future. Perhaps something we can flag with the Launceston Historical Society if there is a gap, because I know that there is a great collection in records of the history of Launceston street names.
Great, thank you. Nothing from the Deputy? Anything further?
I need to say that...
Councillor Harris, you moved it, so just check.
That's all right, sorry.
Anyone else want to speak to the street names? There we go. Being none, back to the movie, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, just to answer Councillor Gibson's question, that Don Morrison, in fact, wrote a book on the names of Launceston streets, and I'm sure that's a very useful starting point. I used to work with Don. It isn't why I moved all these motions about the names, but nevertheless, I do find them interesting, so I do appreciate where Councillor Gibson's coming from. It would be a pity for the reasons behind the names to be lost.
Great. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Thanks, Michael. Organisational Services Network at 19. 19.1 is the lease for the Tamer Yacht Club. This one requires absolute majority, so the recommendation is that Council, by absolute majority, resolves to lease public land situated at 11 Park Street and part of King Street Park in Patterson Street adjacent to Royal Park to the Tamer Yacht Club Incorporated. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor has moved. Seconder. Councillor Walker has seconded. Deputy Mayor.
I think the fact that they've been there since time immemorial, serving a purpose for Launceston that may be harder to get in and out of the water than it once was, but I think that they certainly deserve the right to remain there.
Right. A second to Councillor Walker.
Yeah, look, it by appearances is all very straightforward. This is an ongoing lease, and that rate has been struck. I would just flag that, you know, that particular corner of waterfront area, there's a little bit of Crown land in front of it. It has a bit of a no man's land quality to it because of the layout there, and it might be nice to sort of visit that at some point, just to get a bit more clarity around. I don't know, maybe bringing that little bit of Crown land across to council if that was possible, or something along those lines, because there seems to be a little bit of foreshore neglect, shall we say, in that little spot there. But other than that, yes, Yacht Club, it seems like a completely suitable use for that piece of land that, of course, is also vulnerable to flooding at times. Even it might be zoned mixed use, it probably only certain things it can never be used for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Now I've got a couple of questions. Councillor Gibson and Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Just two questions. I wanted to just understand the $8,000, obviously in line with the valuation, but yet seemingly quite a lot in comparison to our other community-based organisations. And I wondered, was that to do with the business activity from the renting out of the land to boat owners?
General Manager Louise.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gibson. Yes, you're right. It is related. It doesn't fall within the category of a community lease within our lease and licence policy as adopted by council, so because of the commercial nature of some of their operations.
Great, thank you. It's the first one in a while we've seen like that, so I just wanted to double check that. And the other thing I wanted to double check was that the leasee has requested that council renew the lease of the area to enable it to continue housing large and small boats. Was the amount that had previously been the amount of land, the land delineation that was previously leased to them, is it exactly the same? Has there been any change at all? It doesn't sound like it from the report.
There's been no change to the title boundaries for the lease portion.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, question?
Yes, the question is just in regard to its location to the river, in regard to how the land is used on a daily basis, and whether in fact it's used to strip back and have anti-fouling and things put on the boats, or is it purely being used for storage, and have our environmental protection officers ever had to visit the site to perhaps report on things from the boats being scraped into the river, or in fact being picked up at high tides or even in floods, that may suggest that this is not necessarily the place where the yacht club should be located forever.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Harris. You might note that in recommendation 2 there is a dot point around the tenant being required to comply with the environmental guidelines for boat repair and maintenance issued by the Environment Protection Authority this year. They are new guidelines that have come into place. In the past, we may have had some conversations in relation to discharge into the waterways. I'm not clear around that, but it's certainly our intention that the activities comply with the guidelines issued by the EPA.
Thank you. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Pentridge?
Mr Mayor, but I think I've had my share to that. I might just say that I tend to agree with Councillor Harris in that I think before much longer we won't have any water down there. So it's a waste of time having the yacht club there if they can't get boats in the water. So maybe we should look at it seriously before we commit ourselves to a longer lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. There being no further comments, Deputy Mayor, to close? Nothing further? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Budget amendments at 19.2. Recommendation is for Council to approve changes to the Council's 23-24 statutory estimates and to consider the adjustments made the 1st of May to the 31st of May by the CEO for that budget. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor's moved. A seconder, Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
I think all of the items that have been in there are explained, and some of them are capital to operations and some of them are operations to capital. So it's just some of the definitions. So some of the projects are still the same, but they're just of a different nature. Once the works have been done, there have been some grants that have been received which need to be accounted for. So I think that, you know, it's sort of fairly business as usual in regards to the explanations there. And I think the other ones are where the CEO has done things under his authority in relation to not really changing the overall budgets.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris is the second. Or anything further?
Only to say it's good to see that the Foster Street shared pathway plan has been included in this budget and that the grant from the state government to fully funded has been transferred.
Thank you. A question, Councillor Gibson.
A couple of questions, thank you. Just as a reminder or for education, the Community Halls Capital federal grant that we received, could I just receive a reminder as to that and how it is intended to be used? Happy to take that on notice. Similarly, there's a lot of projects going on, I understand, so it's not, it's just for my own knowledge, for our knowledge. The similar question, happy for you to take it on notice as well, the St Leonard's Sports Hall access ramp. I remember that the hall was being redone and importantly had a lot of compliance issues. Is that the entrance to the St Leonard's Athletics Centre Hall, or is it the other one? Happy for that to be on notice as well, if need be. Yep. The other question is, sorry, I didn't let you speak. Is that what you wanted to say?
I can take it on notice, but I believe that, I'm just looking here, so the grant was for that particular project.
Great. That's what I thought. One leads to the other. Yep. And thank you. Brilliant. The other point that I just wanted to raise was on page 59 of the amendments. It concerns the Workers' Memorial Garden and the state funds that have been now received for that project. Noting that project hasn't commenced, presumably that will just roll forward. Is that correct?
As a capital project, that is correct.
Brilliant, thank you. The other one, just for my own education, is the Better Active Transport grant through the Department of State Growth. So Councillor Harris referenced the Forster Street. Could we just receive a reminder of that project and the grants received for it?
Take that on notice as well and provide an update.
Thank you. A question, Professor.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, you.
Thank you. My question, I'm happy to notice, what proportion of the expenditure of the budget goes into pavement maintenance? The reason why I am interested in it, recently I gave a presentation at the Royal Australian College of Physicians on balance disorder among people with memory problems, which won actually the best prize in that conference. Now, what we found that 52% of people with memory problems have balance problem. Now, we also know balance problem increases with old age. The risk of having balance problem is falling, and falling leads to fractures, hospitalization, institutionalized, and increased mortality. This make me, the other thing about it, how an activity is important in preventing balance problem. The council has been leaders in promoting active transport. And what surprised me as well, lack of physical activities, especially among our elderly, only half of them walk actually 30 minutes a day. This leads me to how it's important to have level pavements and walking tracks, etc. Quite often being stopped by elderly people walking, so what are you doing about the uneven surface in the pavement, etc. So that's why I raised this question, because I feel in the future how it's important to emphasize the importance of maintaining our pavements to make it easy for elderly people to walk, as we have maintained our road to such high quality. Thank you.
Thank you. A question, Councillor Harris, then Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. Just a question on the, there's a transfer of funding for land purchase at the Kings Meadows Rivulet. Is anyone able to tell me why we're no longer pursuing that, and actually why were we purchasing that? I was aware of a plan some years ago to have a bridge across the rivulet between our car park and effectively the car park for the Kings Meadows Hotel. I wonder whether it's part of that or whether it's perhaps something else.
It relates to a parcel of land that's subject to flooding and therefore limited use on what can happen in that land. So we allocated some money to acquire that site, given we didn't believe that development could occur on it. I understand initial discussions with the landowner, they're not particularly interested in a different arrangement, so we've just dropped the project for now. I think it was on Verano Street, right on the rivulet. I think it was just above the high school. It was one of the properties above the high school on the rivulet.
Councillor Gibson.
Thanks. Sorry, I missed two of my final questions. There was some capital project funding allocated to the Brisbane Street Mall, and I do remember that we have publicly stated that we haven't finished the Brisbane Street Mall yet. In fact, I believe we've said that as a response to recent questions asked by the public on notice. So I just wondered, does that effectively mean that all of the held money with regard to the Brisbane Street Mall is now expended and thus would need to be allowed for in a future budget?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gibson. Not all of the current held funds for the Brisbane Street Mall project have been transferred. There's still a budget there remaining of $188,000. The intention of officers, as we work through the detail of City Heart projects, will be to come back to Council seeking clarity around future budget requirements.
Thank you. Subsequent question, and I really appreciate that answer. The new budget sitting at 188,403. I guess, given was the decision to take it from that particular pot of funds based on the fact that we hadn't spent it or officers hadn't yet come up with kind of fixes or determinations in the space? And do we think that, taking essentially the figures that we are, that we should be?
So the initial funding was allocated for resolution of the thylacine issue, which has been completed. I guess it was a project that didn't have any immediate sort of commitments on it, so that made it. So in terms of the amount we were looking for to transfer, that was an available amount because we didn't have any future commitments on it. It's understood that there will need to be more money spent on City Heart, and I believe the placemaking team are working on some activation for the mall at the moment, of which there are sufficient funds to deliver that.
Great. because obviously $380,000 to do some additional work in the mall is significantly more than 188, but I appreciate the answer. My final question refers to the budget management policy, which was adopted by Council in 2014. Is that due for renewal at any point soon, or is that one of those policies that does not require additional consideration by Council?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gibson. Yes, it's due for renewal, and it's on a list of a suite of policies that we're working through in the finance area to bring back to Council for further consideration.
Right. Councillor Walker to speak.
Oh, thank you. I just note that additional funds to the Albert Hall there brings that total to 17.3 million that's budgeted, not necessarily spent, I understand. But that would appear to be outside the remit of what was approved. We were at 11 million from the federal government with $5 million contribution from council, making 16 million. Is it no longer the case that, I mean, is that a moving feast, I suppose? And if that feast is moving, is it still moving?
The works identified didn't relate to the project. They related to electricals in the hall and were never part of the initial scope. So we've put in this, it could equally just be its own separate project, but it doesn't relate to the current works.
Any further comments, questions? Deputy Mayor to close.
Clearly it wasn't as clear as I thought.
Okay, putting the recommendation, now the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? So Councillor Pentridge against, all other councillors in favour. The motion is carried. Thank you. So now we're looking at 19.3, which is public consultation feedback for 24-25, budget and annual plan. So the recommendation is that Council receives the 20 submissions and provides the accompanying responses, and notes that the proposed capital project for 24-25 has been updated to include a project to scope the Lilydale Pool refurbishments. Somebody to move the recommendation. Councillor Palmer. Seconded. Councillor Kai. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And yeah, I'd like to speak about that, the recommendation item 2. Council notes that proposed capital program has been updated to include the project to scope the Lilydale Pool refurbishments. Can I get a bit of an update on, has there been any movement in Lilydale through council officers going down there and doing some work at all at the moment in relation to the Lilydale Pool and the toddler pool and the playground? And could you give us a bit of an update where that's at, please?
So there's been significant work undertaken in the Lilydale aquatic centre, whatever you want to call it, area. So they have been investigating the pool. There is a structural issue associated with the pool. I believe the drainage issues have resolved since the pool's been emptied. The water's drained away. So they're working through trying to understand what that structural issue is and how it may be resolved. So what we do understand is that while there's an allocation in the budget for investigation work, there's going to need to be much more than that spent to resolve the problem. And we'll address that, I guess, when we know.
Yeah, I guess that was my next question. Any idea of when that information will come back to us, just so we can look at how much we're potentially up for in relation to that work? Because it could be thousands, it could be hundreds of thousands, it could even be millions. We don't know until that information comes back.
No, we don't know. It's probably going to be hundreds of thousands. I can't give you an exact date, but the officers are working on it as a priority. So happy to get officers to give a fuller update in the bulletin if you like.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, but I'm also really aware that the community are definitely very aware that this is on our agenda, and many people are obviously contacting us as the elected reps and wanting to know what is going on down there. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate these things take time. So whilst I'll be supporting and voting for this today, this item, I'm very aware that the community are expecting us to get back to them in the near future with some positive answers in relation to the signage we've had up, in relation to the toddler pool, in relation to the leaking of the new playground, and so on. So thank you very much for your answers, and I'll do my best to keep advocating for them. Thank you.
Councillor Keyes, the seconder.
Just a similar follow-up with that one. We're in winter now, so I guess it's how do you know, it's not that urgent, but I was just wondering whether it will be by summer, whether it'll be ready or not.
I can't answer that question. I'm going to say it is urgent from our perspective because any major structural works will take a long time, and which may mean that we might struggle to get it open for the summer season, so which is why it's urgent now.
We've got some councillor questions. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, thank you. Mine sort of unfortunately go back to Lilydale as well. Just in the depth of the answers, and I think I raised this at the workshop, that I think that, you know, again, given the nature that there are some structural issues, that a more fulsome answer to the comment regarding the toddlers pool, but there are some structural issues with the pool and we are investigating and will continue to keep the community informed on what's going on, would be a more fulsome response to put in there to the questioners. So at least they said there is something, there's a reason why we can't do something, but we are looking at it and we will talk to you, I think would be a really useful thing to go in there. And I think the other one was in relation to Tony Nair and his question in regards to the cycleway or walkway up to Lilydale Falls. We make reference to the only place it could go is along the railway line. And I think there's just a little bit more depth of answer that could be given there, because I know that part of the railway line is actually not owned by Tasrail, and we're happy to either have ongoing conversations in regards to a solution, might be just some extra words on the back of that, so that at least we just haven't dismissed it and said we can't do it because it doesn't fit along the roadway. There's this option, but it's going to require a lot of other work associated with it, which we're happy to work with the community on. Just a little bit more is all I'd ask to put in there.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. Yes, obviously the significant number of responses that we got through our authentic community engagement process is brilliant. And obviously the process is absolutely in line with our values. So my first question is, are we going back to each of the named members of the community who have provided us with an annual plan or budget submission in writing with a response, and this should be taken as the draft of the content contained within?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gibson. Yes, that's absolutely the intention, and we'll take on the comments from the Deputy Mayor to ensure that we capture those as part of those responses as well. Obviously, there are a number of pieces of feedback that came from unknown persons. Doesn't mean they have any less value, but it does mean we won't be able to respond to them individually.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and I definitely thought that was the case. So then I've got some specific questions around the submissions that are received. The first question is around Barry French's submission with regard to Waverley, obviously a very tireless campaigner for the area of Waverley. It says, Council has plans to construct an adventure play area at Waverley Lake to replace the previous playground. I think what we should do, and my question is, could we integrate that response with the strategy and give an indicative time frame of where that sits in terms of the number of years that Mr French and the community should wait?
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Yes, we can endeavour to do that if there's a time frame available based on the program of works.
Thank you. My next question is in regard to the submission received from Helen Cunningham. The City of Launceston has developed the South Launceston Health Precinct Parking Implementation Plan to identify what improvements and changes can be implemented to better manage overall parking in the South Launceston area, particularly with regard to the hospital. Councillor Walker might be able to help me here as well as officers, just with regard to where that plan sits as an endorsed and current council strategy. with regard to the health precinct parking implementation plan?
I need to check, but I'm pretty sure it's been workshopped. I don't believe it's ever come to council for endorsement, but I'll need to check that.
Yeah, I think that's important in that response because it's certainly something that I haven't signed off on. So if that could be referenced in the Helen Cunningham response. The other one is Tony Nah, and certainly take on board the Deputy Mayor's conversations with regard to point 4. Council will be working with the Lilydale community to progress a men's shed at the Lilydale Recreation Ground. So I definitely know that they are conversations that have occurred. I'm just not sure yet, has there been a formal process that has seen us arrive at that point? Specifically, I'm guessing that there would need to be a change of lease or hire arrangement or whatever we have with the footy club, and is point 4 kind of current and correct in terms of where we're at with that process? And I know it is a process because I've been part of it, and finding a place for the men's shed.
It is certainly a process. Look, it's so we've worked with the community. The only place we see for the men's shed is at the recreation ground, and we're working through the challenges that exist at that site now.
Thank you. Yeah, great. On page 54, I'm sorry, I won't get pages because that is always confusing. The submission made by Rosemary Armitage. Now, specifically, the response provided to question 9. Question 9 says, question with regard to the properties that we know as Katie's and Birchall's, current valuation, costs to date, including loss of rates. We respond by saying that the legal fees have only cost us $28,000. I would have thought we've had that many contracts drawn up and we've had that many pieces of back and forth that $28,000 would be rather small amount with regard to the expenditure incurred through legal fees with regard to Birchall's and Katie's.
Thank you for your observation, Councillor Gibson. It may be that not all the invoices have come in for the advice that we have received to date, but that's currently the committal in our system.
Since the project began?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, I'll need to ask another question without initiating a process to see us ensure that the system is able to correlate all of the invoices incurred. Could we please have another look at that? From the beginning, the purchase of the Birchall's and Katie's building. So we're talking how many years ago? Yeah. So could we please have a look at that to ensure that the information we're providing, a member of the upper house, as we've seen today, who has a keen interest in this, is correct and indeed is able to be confirmed. I certainly take on board that what you've said, the system is saying that that's the answer. Could we please have a second look before we provide that response?
We certainly can, Councillor Gibson.
And I think I'll ask as well, I think it would be appropriate that we I would like to have, please, the responses retabled to councillors. So I seek, CEO, your advice with regard to the mechanism you'd like, if it's formal amendment, or that we take, we accept the public submissions and draft responses in principle, noting that they'll be recirculated to councillors. Certainly something I'd like to see occur, please.
If you want to accept them in principle today, and I'm happy to circulate them via email when they're complete, and then and everyone can provide their comments at that time, if that suits.
Further comments and questions? Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I'd just like to hear what Council Officer, thoughts are in regards to the positive response that we've received this year as far as feedback goes for our annual budget. And of course, we had sponsored social media advertising running as well. And even though there was sort of overwhelming feedback there, it was only treated as anecdotal. It's not included in this formal feedback. People were encouraged to go to the formal process and lodge their submissions there. However, this being the modern world, people felt as though writing it on a social media post would be enough. So I suppose my questions are twofold. What does explain the positive increase in public submissions, and can we capture in future submissions via social media rather than asking people to have to go to a formal process that obviously they're less likely to do?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Yes, we can in the future take on board social media commentary. I must admit that I did scan through all those responses myself and found them consistent with some of the other submissions, and the ones that weren't, particularly around maintenance of council facilities, have been actioned independently of this process. In terms of the increased response rate, I think it's important for the community to have an understanding and have the opportunity to engage with the detail about how we set budgets and determine future programs of work. And it's a work in progress in terms of how we share that information in a way that's accessible and understandable and plain English, because some of the language we use is not necessarily accessible all the time in this space.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say it's actually vital for us as councillors to have that feedback, and so I certainly, encourage anything that can be done in that respect. And I suppose that's what I'm asking, is what can we do further in that space to either capture some of that feedback formally. I think probably a lot of us read the comments, and it's great that they have been actioned, but there'll be no trail upon that really once this process is over. Whereas this process, of course, there is. I don't know if that was a question or not, but I thought I'd say it anyway.
Yep. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to start with a question first in regard to the comments made by Malcolm Reid and Malcolm Cohen, who are former presidents of TBUG, just in regard to the Launceston Transport Strategy and the 4-year implementation plan that covers 22 to 25. They make a number of suggestions, of which most have not got a particular response. Is that the intention, that the responses to their questions or the suggestions they make be included in the next 4-year strategy from 25 to 28?
Acting CEO.
So, in terms of the details, the detailed projects they want on us, it's not possible in terms of the budget submission process to address every detail at this stage. I guess the answer reflects that we're going to approach it from a strategic network perspective and prioritise based on that. TBUG are, of course, part of our Transport Committee and get input as part of that committee.
Thank you, CEO. And I guess that follows on that perhaps the residents of Lilydale, whilst there is money to investigate the cause of the pool leakage or whatever's going on out at Lilydale, any subsequent decision to improve or rebuild the pool or whatever might be needed will, of course, be subject to finance and budgetary consideration at a future date. It is very important that people understand that the process, that it isn't a guarantee that something will happen at Lilydale. You only have to look at Glenorchy's pool to see that a city could not keep its own pool open. And in fact, it became a state election issue. So I think it's very important that people, and I don't wish to be the Grinch talking about such things, but it is something that needs to be investigated. And I'm sure if it's a simple fix, we'll do it. However, if it's a completely $1 million repair job, then council will have to look at that amongst its other budgeted items to see where it properly fits.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Gibson?
Thanks,
Councillor Walker?
yes. I'll start with the question before I speak because similar to Councillor Harris, I do think actually all of the Lilydale responses need updating with regard to the change that's been enacted. For example, we talk about the $300,000 that we've spent on the pool in 2002. We talk about the fact that these works not only improved the filtration of the pool, also new heating system replaced the previous system. And we also talk about the fact that we're looking forward to a successful season when the pool's due to open in December. So I think the Lilydale responses do need rewording. I was really pleased to hear, and I knew already, that the anecdotal responses, particularly around the aquatic centre, there were many, with regard to the cleanliness of that facility or the perceived cleanliness of the facility, were already actioned, and I know some additional changes are being enacted in that space. So that's appreciated. I think the budget responses this year were the largest certainly I've ever seen. I think probably we need to allow for just a bit more time in future workshops, so our learnings should be that the 55 minutes that was allocated to go through all of the budget modelling in session 3 and then consider 20 or more submissions was a lot to do in a small amount of time. So that would be hopefully the learning that would come out of it. Certainly we've moved to a new way of councillors being able to consult and be involved during the process. That's appreciated, it's acknowledged, I agree with it, but I think when you get a large number of community voices into the process, and most of them were not critical, they were wanting to make their community a better place. That's to be admired. So before I sit down, I'd like to move an amendment. The amendment is that we alter the words of number 1 in the recommendation, that we receives the words would be receives submissions as outlined in attachment 1, provided the numbers referenced, and provide in principle support for the accompanying responses. Sure. Yep, I'll write it out for you, no worries.
In order, so it was Councillor Palmer was the initial mover, Councillor Kai was the seconder.
Yes, that's all right. We're amending the motion, and then if that gets approved, then we'll go back to the motion.
Deputies seconded, we vote on the amended, and then those who have already spoken to the OG don't get to speak again, do they? So, blame it on me. And so just whilst that's being written up, I've still got Councillor Walker to speak, Councillor Pentridge to speak. Okay, councillors. So the amended motion has been moved by Councillor Gibson. I've just got the deputies seconded it just as it came through first. So now we vote on the amended motion coming through. So all of those in favour of the amended motion, the amended words that we'll see on the screen. Yep, everyone's seen it, everyone's read it. Yep, that's everybody, all councillors present. So now have the amended motion now is the motion. Now I have Councillor Walker and Councillor Pentridge noted to speak. Don't need to speak, it's procedural, so we don't need to speak to it again, I don't think. Unless it was an alternate motion, then we would speak again. Okay. Is that right? Oh, learning. It's a procedural, yeah, because it's been spoken. It's just a change of the words. If it was alternate, it'd have to be spoken to all over again. But the people who had already spoken can't speak again. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Walker.
I'll speak to the amended. Thank you, and it won't be on regards of the amendment. We will take that as read.
Yes.
But I will bite via you, Chair, to the suggestion that I might be have some interest in the submission that Helen Cunningham made in regards to a footbridge that's needed across Wellington and Bathurst streets near the hospital on the bottom side at Franklin Street in order to create a safe passage. Numerous times I've seen people standing on a tiny median strip in the middle that's on a slope, waiting because they've got halfway across, like a game of Frogger, waiting to get to the other half. It would be funny if it wasn't so serious. I shouldn't make light of it really, because unfortunately it is a sort of area where you can imagine, you know, someone could come a cropper there. But again, the City of Launceston talks about the South Launceston Health Precinct Parking Implementation Plan, which I would definitely like to see, living about 3 blocks south of the hospital myself. I think the plan involves allowing people to park all day in my street, essentially. But it, of course, is better than that and greater than that. But what we have at the moment is an expanding hospital. We've got, you know, large amounts of money. Is it, you know, $10 billion over 10 years? What is it? 500 million over 10 years? I can't remember. State government with, for example, a 7-storey, you know, as we saw in the media recently, parking station on the corner of Charles and Howick Streets. Now that's going to have an impact in the area. We have money that council has access from the Black Spot program federally to make changes to the top of Howick Street where it joins High Street. I think that is relevant to the hospital precinct plan, if there is such a thing. We have the intersections of Mulgrove Street and Howick Street, which is extremely problematic, where you have traffic banking up for 2 to 3 blocks in the morning. In the evening, you have traffic banking up down Howick Street. And that intersection with Howick Street, I know we have done work on that. There are still accidents on that intersection of Howick Street and Wellington Street. One of the most, you know, highly problematic intersections in our city. All around the hospital, we have issues, and I would love to see a South Launceston Health Precinct parking implementation plan, because I hopefully would go with a traffic management plan in the area as well. And with that implementation of things like multi-storey car parking, of course it's going to have impacts, and I know that those assessments will be done as development applications come along, but we can no longer deal with that area in a piecemeal by piecemeal situation. We have to have an overall plan. I would say in large part it's for Howick Street, but to lesser extents Charles Street and of course Wellington and Bathurst Street. So I commend Helen for bringing that to our attention. I think we all accept that, you know, it's problematic in that area. 2 busiest roads in Launceston side by side, with no easy alternative for anyone to cross there. So we will have to put some thought to that, but I hope in the larger picture we put greater thought to the whole hospital precinct, as it's becoming anecdotally known, I suppose, which it will increasingly so. But we cannot deal with these developments piece by piece. We need a conversation with the state government as to how their plans are going to affect our city and who is going to pay for the infrastructure changes required in order for that area to function effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Pentridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to go back to the Littledale pool, and I'm amazed that obviously pools don't take as high a priority as bike tracks. But to suggest that that Glenorchy, one of our bigger cities, can't afford to fix its pool, so we'd better prepare ourselves, or Littledale better prepare itself, and our mayor here, Mayor of Littledale, to get used to the idea it might not have a pool. Now, having talked to some people, I think it's totally unacceptable. Littledale is, as we keep saying, although we're all pretty good at talking, not real good at doing things, that pool needs to be fixed. The kids in Littledale need to learn to swim. So this is a direct comment about, I've talked to some of the parents, I've talked to some of the people in the community. The pool can be fixed. If this council can't afford it, I've got it on good authority that community people will put in and fix it. Obviously with permission from our CEO. But really, it's unacceptable to even suggest that the children, summer's coming on, as Susie said, we've got winter, we've got plenty of time. Let's get on with it. Let's see what's going to be fixed, even if it's not a temporary fix, but a fix that gets us through summer, that gives the children of that area an opportunity to continue playing. I'm talking in particular the toddlers pool. We've got to teach the kids to swim. And it's not as easy as anyone thinks. I've got a couple of grandchildren. So let's keep working and let's make it a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Any further questions or speakers? There being none, I come to Councillor Gibson now as the mover of the amended to close. Back to the original, which is Councillor Palmer to close, because it's procedural.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I think everyone's pretty much said the way I feel, and I agree that there's different opinions around the table, but yes, please, in your words, CEO, it is an urgent matter that we need to give the community of Lilydale and all those families down there and the children, of course, will they or won't they have a pool? And as far as I see it, I think absolutely they deserve that down there. They are very much a part of our community. And yeah, I take heart that it's a very urgent matter for you, as it is for me and many around this table. So thank you very much, and look forward to the communication soon.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. So putting it to the vote, all of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, moving into agenda item 20, which is closed council.
I have a question, a procedural question. Okay. So obviously, I understand completely why a tender would be assessed and dealt with in closed. I wonder, was there any consideration given that this is not specifically people competing with regard to price and some of the normal things that tenderers put forward, was there any consideration to whether in fact this item was to be considered in closed?
Acting CEO, Leanne?
For the question, Councillor Gibson, yes, there was consideration to having the matter dealt with in closed. Because not all applicants are moving through, it was determined that a decision would be made in closed session to give us a chance to contact successful and unsuccessful applicants. And then council, as part of the closed process, can determine what information will be released publicly after that decision is made.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. So somebody to move that we go into closed under the current following matters that will be discussed, which is confirmation of minutes, periodic standing contracts tender, provision of supplementary contact labour as well. So Councillor Harris has moved that we go into closed to discuss that, seconded by Councillor Britton. All of those in favour to move into closed? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Councillors, looking for somebody to move that the table of contents here is a correct record of what was spoken about in closed council. Moved by Councillor Britton. Seconder? Seconded by the Deputy. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We finish up today at 4:18, with the next meeting being here at 1 o'clock on the 27th of June.